should conduct themselves accordingly. I remind members this meeting is being live streamed to the public. Please can those attending switch off your cameras and mute your microphones when you're not speaking to ensure there is no unnecessary background noise. And I also remind members to ensure their chat function is switched on and to use that facility to indicate to me when they wish to speak on a particular item. Please do not speak until I invite you to do so, and remember to unmute your microphone and switch your camera on. The audio version of this meeting will be uploaded for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the council. In terms of the agenda, we are going to slightly deviate from the published agenda items, but if I can deal with apologies first.
Committee apologies, Chair, and Councillor Weeks and Councillor Reynolds, and Cabinet members Councillor Lacey gave apologies, and also Councillor James Clark. For Councillor Clark, there was issues with the start time and conclusion of their website.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Any other apologies?
So Sylvia is away for a few minutes.
Thanks. Okay, any declarations of interest? I'm going to declare an interest in the housing service plan, because I work in housing in Newport, but having discussed the item previously, I don't see any conflicts of interest preventing me from continuing the meeting. And then we're going to deviate and deal with the meeting minutes of the previous meeting held on 11th September after the service plan review. So we'll pick that up after officers have presented their reports. That's okay. So our first service plan review is housing, I believe. So please come and join us. It's housing and community.
Need to be reminded of my name.
I did the same thing. Okay, thanks for attending. There's no cabinet member, or I don't know if you do want to give any introductions. I'll just hand it over to David.
I'll just do a very quick introduction. The cabinet member was planning to be here, unfortunately couldn't be the time. But this of the three service plans we go through today, this is probably the most challenging area currently across my directorate. Significant challenges from homelessness, which is sort of right in the end at the moment, not dissimilar to the rest of the country, but we still make progress in Newport, and that's what David and his team have been doing. So you can't quite see the green shoots yet, but hopefully we'll be on track to be sharing that the next time we come back for a review, because there's a lot of work going on, which isn't reflected in the performance. With homelessness, significant pressure both in terms of workload, but also in terms of the budget overspend. David, I don't know if you want to then just go through some of the red amber sort of the key points for questions.
Yeah, of course I can. So I think as Paul says, it continues to be a significant area of pressure. And whilst there have been some successes over the past 6 months, particularly in terms of the TACP programme that was really well utilised by the council and our RSL partners, has brought a new housing supply for people who are homeless or threatened with homelessness, or assisted through one of the various resettlement schemes that the council has been involved in. And also some really good examples of casework emerging, for example, within the case studies that you will have seen in the appendix to this document. What we are seeing is that the pressure on the system and the performance, particularly in terms of homelessness prevention, homelessness relief, isn't yet where we need it to be. So kind of in layman's terms, those are the number of people we're working with before they become homeless, either to keep them where they are or to find an alternative housing option. Homeless prevention and homelessness relief is where we're moving people quickly on from temporary accommodation at the point they become homeless into settled housing. And those factors, as Paul has alluded to, kind of really contribute to the total numbers of people in temporary accommodation budget pressure. It's probably just worth pointing out for members of scrutiny that the budget pressure really arises from DWP and central government funding for temporary accommodation. Essentially, the council is unable to recover the full cost of those placements because of the type of temporary accommodation we're having to use. So, for example, bed and breakfast accommodation as opposed to self-contained accommodation with private landlords. So, I mean, those are the kind of the real pressures within the housing service. Just looking at the kind of questions, comments. I think it's probably just worth reflecting on wider work of the service and the asset rationalisation work that's going on within community regeneration. Also within that service area, the work we're doing through the multiply programme to try and improve or support people to improve their numeracy across the city through our adult community development team. And lastly, our Connected Communities team continues to work really hard to support people to resettle into the city. And a key focus there has been working on the Ukrainian support programme over the past 6 months or so. So that's kind of a really high level overview of where we are as a service. Lots of challenges, lots of pressures, and as Paul says, we're doing all we can to progress a range of measures through our housing transformation programme to begin to continue to tackle the situation and to improve performance. Other questions from the committee?
Thanks. Questions? Councillor Cox?
How many refugees does Newport take in?
As a local authority?
Yeah.
So Newport itself doesn't take in, well, especially like this. So in terms of asylum, Newport is an asylum dispersal area. So the Home Office disperses people into accommodation in Newport, and that's managed by the Home Office and their accommodation provider. Now, if people are in asylum dispersal accommodation and receive a positive decision, then that group of people may well have a duty to be rehoused by the council. And so we may pick people up through the housing service there. Obviously, when people are in that accommodation, they're accessing a variety of public services as anybody else would. Now, we do expect to see a further pressure in terms of housing due to the streamlined asylum process that the Home Office are rolling out to it. And that will essentially speed up the rate at which decisions are made. And so we are having to respond as a council to try and acquire more forms of temporary accommodation to place some really, really vulnerable people at the point they receive a positive decision.
Just related to that, could I just ask a question? How much more efficient could they become? What were we looking at before, say, the number of asylum seekers who were confirmed to have leave to remain in previous years? What's it going to be now? What do you anticipate it being?
So it's a really difficult one to track, Councillor Thomas, just because of the data that the council receives at the moment. So we've got some projections that are kind of internal, just to help us plan as a service, but because of the data flow and the data that we have access to, it's really difficult. A specific number on that, I'm afraid.
Are they going to be a lot more efficient? Are they going to fulfil their target of improving their delivery?
At this stage, it's we just
Thank you.
Councillor Harris. Apologies, Councillor. Any other questions?
I've got a few questions. Right, have you got any data on how many are on the list for the temporary housing? How many people are on, temporary housing?
Yeah, so at the moment we're accommodating, on average, it's about 470. I think I can provide you with that exact average breakdown. That's absolutely fine.
And the next question is, have you got an update on the empty properties fetching back into use?
Yeah, so through the TACP programme, we worked with the RSLs in the city to identify how that could bring RSL stock back into use. As you'll see in the service plan, we're also really kind of focusing on the privately owned properties. Whilst we're not at target there yet.
Social landlords?
Yes, with, sorry, no, sorry,
No.
Councillor, correctly. So the specific measure within the service plan applies to kind of a performance metric that's been traditionally counted in terms of empty properties, and that's focused on privately owned properties. So there we're seeing an improvement in performance, and as you'll see in the narrative, we feel confident we're going to meet that target this year. We're also, you'll be aware, out to consultation on the proposals around the council tax regime in terms of empty properties. And as I said, in terms of the social rented sector, we're working really hard with RSL partners and used funding streams such as the recent TACP programme to try and get properties back into use where they've been empty for some time.
On the council tax agreement, the cabinet took a decision to consult on that at the last cabinet meeting. I believe the results of that consultation and a decision will come back to full council when it's setting council tax this year. Obviously, from the service area, that's a bit, could be a potential incentive to help with bigger empty properties, because got to get that down when we've got people thinking about it.
So can
One
I,
last question, sorry. Last year during the winter, we used the Newport Leisure Centre for the breast sleepers and the homeless. Where are we putting them this year?
We've got arrangements in place. We're just waiting to dot the i's in the contract, but it's, so I can't quite confirm now public from Councillor Cleverly.
Will we get an email to know?
Yeah, we'll let people know. It's absolutely fine.
Yeah, it'd be very good if we could have a sort of almost like a newsletter so that we can roll that information out to organisations that we're involved in. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. Just to kind of manage an expectation there.
Yes.
The process would be very much us working with our commission partners to identify people from a risk perspective. It's likely to be a mixture of kind of some dedicated provision and a working with our supported housing providers to utilise space within their buildings.
And it's worth saying that even when we've had extreme cold weather, isn't it? We still struggle to get everyone in. Not everyone still wants to come in.
Yeah.
So
Very
it's
much
not just
representative.
so it's not just a straightforward issue. Our job is to make sure that we've got that provision and we will have that provision in place. But we can't force people.
No.
So
Councillor Flynn, I will come to Councillor Dan into the second.
I was going to steal Councillor Adam's question for clarification regarding the tax premiums. Can we target social landlords with this policy? Regards to the empty properties, can we target social landlords?
To be honest, I need to come back to you on that, Councillor. I personally don't think so, but it really is a kind of a council tax policy question. So we probably need to come back to you once we've had just something for this big events.
that may be a point you want to make on the consultation. Obviously, it's not just the public, it's on you know, it's going to make a point relatively.
Consultation is still. I'm going to give the councillors online just an opportunity if that's okay. I think Councillor Linton had your hand up first.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question, really looking through what information you have on the bidding scheme, because I know I'm getting a lot of I know we got pressures, and I'm getting a lot of pressure as well from residents saying that it doesn't seem to be working. They're bidding and bidding, not getting anywhere. I know we got lack of houses and the like, but are we really looking at the bidding scheme without partners, an alternative, or just update me on that?
Of course I can, Councillor Linton. So I think as you kind of recognise, the first point is that demand for social housing, and it's so very small social housing that are rented out through, or allocated, I should say, through the bidding scheme, is incredibly high, and the supply of properties is outstripping demand. But we are looking at the list itself and working through a process of trying to ensure that everybody on that list is actively looking for social housing. Obviously, the vast majority of people are. And secondly, working internally and having some discussions with partners about how we can ensure that as far as possible, notwithstanding the discrepancy from supply and demand, we can ensure that people in the highest need are placed.
Okay, thanks. Secondly, I don't know if it's true. Other people I've been hearing seem to be potentially getting preferential treatment. They move out of their own house and sell it, and then move directly back into another property, which is RSL properties. I wonder if you could comment on, I don't know, on that type of issue.
I think, if I may, Councillor, I think that's probably a matter for you to raise on individual cases.
Okay, right, all right, fair enough. That's fair enough. Also, what is other one? I'm getting requests for as people are getting older and they're living in, or got 3-bedroom properties, they own them and the like, and they wish to downsize and move into another RSL accommodation. What is the procedure, or what have you got in place for these older people that want to downsize, and where we could take advantage of taking their 3-bedroom house off them and them moving into a single person accommodation or a multi-complex?
Yeah, so we work with RSL partners to enable that process, Councillor Linton. And again, if you want to contact me around any specific examples, and we can look at that together as part of day-to-day casework.
All right, lovely, great, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Linden. Councillor Dan. I know Councillor Pym stole your thunder on the question.
That's right, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Hi, David, and hi, Paul. Yeah, it's just a quick question around really what Councillor Pym has asked, and I was just looking at the public accountability measures guidance for local authorities, and I understand with regards to empty properties liable for council tax, which have been unoccupied for a period of 6 months or more, the exclusions include RSLs, I understand. So it's just to shed light on clarity with regards to that, and whether, you know, the council premium tax, whether we do have, you know, the powers of authority to actually impose that on RSLs. It's just, yeah, just to shed some light on that, really. That's my question. And I think Councillor Pym's already asked that anyway. Thank you.
Do we need to perhaps follow that up in writing? Because I don't make you quite sure of the answers. Is that all right? Yeah. We'll put this down. We'll come back with a written answer. Is that all right? Should we get a written answer to that question? Yeah. Great. Okay. Councillor Thomas?
Yes. We know that the Welsh Government policy brought in an statutory obligation on local authorities to rehouse. I'm not actually sure of the term that we're using here. Are we using the term of sleepers, or are we, you know, this would be single people who previously wouldn't have qualified to be housed by the local authority? So what term are we using?
We can use for sleepers, people sleepers.
I just wondered, did they make any other? Did they include you and put the responsibility on local authorities in any other way? Was that the only one at that time?
So at that time, that as you say, they amended the priority categories to focus specifically on people sleeping. But it's you know, that wouldn't include, for example, people who are sofa surfing or the same threat to the family.
Yeah. And can we, have we been able to quantify the extra revenue which is needed by the council to include that cohort to find accommodation for them? Or is it just a question we just don't have the accommodation anyway, so it's not actually costing us a lot more?
So I think the wider responsibilities has meant that we're placing people into accommodation,
right,
which attracts the housing benefit subsidy.
Right, so we are managing.
Yeah. And so that is an additional pressure.
It's a difficult to say the exact cost, because you know what's that, because of that sudden surge, it means they're going into what is marginally much more expensive costs.
Yes.
And you know, not, it's difficult to plan those things.
Exactly,
It doesn't really
exactly.
switch on or switch off, is it?
Yeah.
So that's the cost. So they're not at an optimum. No, it's not optimum. Houses, there's all sorts, is it? But this, from a council point of view of funding it and from their own experience, they're not at an optimum provision. So it's very expensive provision. And so we'd hope to certainly address that. There is additional funding that's being provided to councils, but in Newport, like I'd say, the vast majority of councils that hasn't matched the significant increase in cost and the shortfall in housing benefits. So there still remains quite a large gap.
I mean, what I do recognise as well is once you have people who you're supporting in that way, who you're successfully able to support in that way, and the other ones who perhaps aren't as successfully, you haven't persuaded to join, to take those accommodation bases. You've also got all this requirement for additional support from voluntary sector organisations or council officers with, with advice and information services, that sort of thing. So, if we're making contact with more people now because they're coming to us because we've now got this statutory obligation, is it actually a successful process? Is it helping that we're actually making those connections and bringing them into services? And are the services contributing in the long term to them getting out of their current situation?
Maybe probably give the specifics. I'd say there's certainly work to be done. Like I said, this rapid change and the rapid increase has meant that we're probably still not offering enough services. There's a lot of work going on at the moment in terms of changing the way the whole housing works to make it much more focused on individuals and sort out their rather than just addressing little bits. And stuff like that.
And I do realise, presumably it might be months, years before we know if any of those people's lives have been turned around by that additional support and contact with them, just reaching out to them.
And I think that's a really important point. Often for people who are sleeping rough, that is as a result of a really kind of long history, potentially dating back to childhood trauma. So whilst it is a housing issue, obviously it's a housing issue, actually a lot of the solutions and causes don't relate to housing. And so we are working really closely at the moment with support services, supporting people with drugs and alcohol issues, with our colleagues at the Health Board to ensure that we try and provide a joined up support offer. We need fortnightly a task force meeting with partners from those agencies, and there's a weekly multidisciplinary team meeting to focus in on a small number of people who have really significant needs to try and find individualised solutions.
That's the operational group. We note here that the Rest Sleepers Task Force was set up and it's achieved a 50% of its target so far. Sorry, I can't remember what page that's on there. There we are on page 25. At 50%, have many new initiatives been introduced? By looking at this in a fresh way, and having this, the new initiative of the Rest Sleepers Task Force.
I think the key thing that the Rest Sleepers Task Force has done so far, brought the services together so that we can begin to have kind of different conversations and really begin to understand people's journeys into and out of rest sleeping. So for me, I think the key achievements are getting, say, colleagues from the Health Board and Health working alongside us, the Substance Misuse Service, and certainly through the group of through the MDT that sits below the task force, we've begun to see some positive outcomes for individuals who've been, maybe sleeping rough for many years, who've been in and out of the system, and who've really struggled to make anything stick. I think the challenge when working with this group of people is that, as you said, Councillor Thomas, can take a long time, and actually often it's very small steps initially. So this is going to be a piece of work that takes time to really develop into a wider approach.
We've also become from the UK government's budget, and we know that benefits are not devolved. They intend to, or they've stated that they intend to be harder on benefit claimants, don't they? Is that going to put additional pressure on the system?
I think it possibly good, particularly when people, for instance, sort of cohort people we're talking about, struggle to maybe engage with appointments and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's something that certainly through our commission services, but also working with, you know, the prevention and inclusion service and people with financial resilience, we really need to work on to support people there.
Thank you. Is it a good moment to ask about this community learning programme?
You can. Can I just go back to the multi-agency task force point? So the action was to establish a multi-agency task force. And the comments suggest you've established one. So it's not a complete action. You've got it 50% of it out there. But you know, you've done what you've said you do. There might be a new action on a new service plan which says to start embedding some of those things, but it looks to me like it's completely done what you said you could do.
I think there's no point going to the house.
Yeah. Okay.
Build your homework.
Yeah. Yeah, and just sorry, there is something else under this bit as well. HMO inspections. We know during COVID that staff were not able to go and get in and check over houses from whose HMO licence was due for renewal. Are we absolutely sure we're back on target with that one?
We are.
Right. And actually, the staff who are working in that team, are they all working back based in the office, as it were, now?
So yes, so we have there's an office downstairs, civic, where the mental health housing team are based, like many other teams across the council, based, and particularly because their work is actually out there in the community. You know, they'll be working kind of on a bit of a hybrid basis.
Right. Yes.
Have you still got the office in the library?
Yes.
Housing?
Yes. So yeah.
I've
So
got to
on floor 3, I think. Yeah.
agree.
Depends on who's
Yeah,
there.
it's very nice, looking very nice, yeah. Very refurbished. This adult community learning programme, how will the details be decided on the programme that you're putting on? Because we saw examples there of what did I just say it was food hygiene and something else related to that. First aid, thank you. I mean, how are you establishing that that's what's needed? And are you putting your focus there on commercial establishments and supporting commerce to provide the right training course? Or you're actually going out and saying to members of the public, what do you want to see in a community trade, learning scheme?
Okay, so through our adult community learning service, we work as kind of part of a consortium for a lot of it with Pwyllgor. So we work with them to establish what's needed, the curriculum, etc., etc. And we also regularly take feedback from learners and seek to tailor the curriculum to meet the needs that are coming back. What we've also done through the Multiply project, which is a new project that's sitting under ACL, is really kind of work across the council to identify where we can deliver those opportunities in different ways. So, for example, we're working with colleagues in the prevention and inclusion service to look at how they can deliver programs to, people using their services. So it's a really a mixture there, Councillor Thomas.
And the last one was the toilet strategy. This is on my mind. Every time I go to a 50+ forum committee meeting, this is on my mind. Yes, where have we got to with the? Have we actually managed to secure any further places of relief for our citizens?
I think
or is that not what it's about?
So
Yes, so the toilet strategy is particularly about that. It's about the overarching of a toilet provided across the city, so that council toilets are that it's part of the. Yeah. So we currently have a toilet strategy. I don't know if everyone's read it. I'm past that.
No, I'm not.
Toilet reading.
I'm just
It's not the most popular strategy, is it? No, but that's due to review. I think it's a review every 4 or 5 years.
Right, so we right.
There's more around the framework, which
Have we actually come up with any more places?
I don't think the strategy itself will produce toilets.
Right,
per se.
okay. It doesn't seem a lot of point in having the strategy
I think-
if we don't have something
I say it,
coming out of it.
I think it's just a legal requirement.
Right.
I wonder if it's sort of focused on, it's lots of older toilets been brought back into use in terms of cafes and so it forms a little bit of regeneration stuff in terms of community as well.
There is,
I didn't know if there was a bit of that in community focus.
it's not so much around that aspect. The council has reduced the number of council owned public communities it has for the last year. It's like most local authorities, but it's around understanding provision. So obviously clubs and others regulate the likes of that and the ones that are own ownerships and parks, etc.
Yeah.
So how those are the right standard, are the sufficient numbers and stuff.
Well, that's the
I
problem,
would-
there are.
yeah. And that it will go to consultation, I believe, but yeah, I wouldn't get your hopes up it will materialise an extra
I
toilet.
mean, what he's often said is there should really be, perhaps some public resource that would identify these on a map.
Yeah, so there is. I've seen a map with toilets on. After time, this is getting niche now, isn't it? I'll
appreciate the link.
I'll find the interesting person in the council whose job it is to generate that map, and they'll signpost that to you.
Thank you.
Maybe we could do a tour of them.
That might be going a bit fast.
Yeah.
It's definitely really clear. This is a tourist attraction.
Couple of questions if I can. So in your introduction on the executive summary, you said council's experienced 130% increase in demand for temporary accommodation. What period has that been? Not just this year, or
That's
since the
since the
pandemic? I suspected it might be. In terms of budget, then we look like we're just shy of £1 million spent on budget, which I presume relates to temporary accommodation costs and charge days. Why are we so overspent if we knew that we were going to have a big spike in temporary accommodation and offices when we set last year's budget? Probably the first question on that page.
So I think there was additional money put in. It hasn't been enough, and some of the savings we hope to achieve haven't achieved fast enough. That's not the only split, it's the large majority of that. It's these marginal costs on, well, things a relatively small number of people that is really good cost. So we do know, and it's David's priority, the team's priority is to get that down. Because, but I would say equally is the picture is very similar in most local authorities. Most local authorities put some in. And I think part of it is such a sea change in the cost of the service area over the last 3 years. Say from seeing the council, recognise but there's almost a reluctance to go back. It can't carry on like that. Surely, and I suppose this change in the ministry of the state, we need to understand that. But also, if there are things we can do to get this down, it just takes a little bit of time. We were just absolutely would like, but that's the main focus now in the service areas to bring that cost down.
Could just setting the budget for this year, then presumably you looked at last year's budget, and do you know if you then increased that based on, well, actually probably looking at last year's actual spend? Did you sort of put something on top of that, or did you think actually we're going to try and save something on that?
So for this year's budget that we're in now, additional money was put in place to recognise this.
Was that on top of actual spend from last year?
That was on. It's probably not a clean picture because some of this is subsidised through grants. We didn't quite know where the Welsh Government grant would sit. So yeah, I couldn't give an exact on where we were. I think it was an additional spend. We're still also hoping that we'd make some savings to offset it. However, the spend is this year has been greater even than last year.
That's what I'm trying to get to. Then has it increased on year?
And I like to, although this is a challenge across all, we recognise we've got to deal with this because this is money that isn't being spent on other services. And we are fortunate this year in that cover it, but it can't be ongoing. So there are things we can do, and there's part of the housing transformation plan that are underway. They will just take a little time to feed through it. And some small, they're not small, they're really difficult, challenging changes. But in the scheme of the overall budget, so what seems relatively small, these around the TA and the number of people at bed and breakfast can have a disproportionate impact on the budget just because of the funding arrangement.
Yeah. Stay on the same page in terms of service area risks, page 20 on there. Housing support grants. The target score we say we're going to get next to the end of the year. What, I'm not sure. So what the risk is with the housing support grants? That we won't spend it, or that we're going to have too much demand and not enough money.
I think the risk is around the ability. So the housing support grant has been kind of capped and frozen, and will be standard next year as well. So what that means that in real terms, that's a cut to the budget in terms of what we can provide from providers. So the risk there is around us being able to commission enough services of sufficient quality with a sufficient kind of range of providers to meet the need.
And then finally, on the social housing grants, we've got inherent risk score of 12, target risk score of 9. We stay at 12 right the way through, so we think it's going to stay at 12. But then in the advanced envelope, it says we've committed for all the grant for the next 2 years, so we probably can't do any more. So hasn't gone down to the time.
I think that's a bit short delivery, isn't it?
It's
Because
slippage.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, as you know, sitting around construction projects, it's very difficult to manage in year 1 year spending, which although we get a bit over 2 years, you've still got to make sure X is done by the drop dead date,
Of course,
which is probably not a sensible way to manage that. But
and I think particularly some of the changes to SHG this year, where the slippage is reviewed earlier in the year, we've just got to stay so on top of it with our partners. So the last thing we want to do is lose, and we're on track not to, but is to lose any social housing grants.
So given that 4 of our RSLs delivering housing in Newport and likely to merge into 2 over the next 12 months, how's that going to impact on social housing grant and our ability to deliver accommodation?
So that's something we're reviewing at the moment. Obviously, the second announcement on potential merger was relatively recently. So I'm working with colleagues and colleagues.
It obviously means that risk isn't dispersed. So
Yeah,
although as
It's also
yeah, that's right. We're heavily dependent on leverage, and we're heavily dependent. So yeah, there's great challenges. Also some potential opportunities, but we need to see how that'll go. Some of this is relatively new, so yeah,
the RSL's involved in that process, keeping the council informed and sort of in the loop in terms of discussions and so forth.
Yeah, so I mean, we've been gradually with ourselves at the senior level, and we'd like to cultivate. So that's certainly an item on the agenda.
And sorry, I've got another one. On your on-call service, which is marked as complete, because you review it in your on-call service, I think it's on page 22. So that's complete, which is great, but it's complete because you had a number of temporary posts in the team, which will expand the rota. So is there a plan for if those temporary posts? What you don't want to be is temporary post ends, we don't get anything funded, and therefore
That's all tied up in the service restructure, which
planning to downgrade that 50% then, just to offset the end.
Any other questions from any of the elected members on the housing and communities major service plan review?
Question about this transitional accommodation little grant, 5.6 million. Have you got any more detail on it?
so 5.6 million. So that's money that's essentially utilised to for ourselves to either buy or refurbish stock, kind of a quite quick time frame, and those properties are ring-fenced to people who are in temporary accommodation or are assisted through monthly resettlement schemes. So, for example, people assisted through the Ukrainian resettlement scheme.
It's really important for us, isn't it? Because when we talk about the marginal cost, that is where the expense has been the home's profit. So success in getting that amount of funding and comparing that to what we 50 odd houses. Yeah, so again, it sounds a small number, but it's at that margin which is really expensive, so it's important. That's what I get.
Yeah. Sorry, I did have one question as a second. The homeless and safety service has been tendered, I think, for the so I think it's delivered by the ward, which you know has been granted salvation. It'd be really good if that information could be publicised to elected members, I think. Just because I refer a lot to doing, I would have ran the Woolwich this year. I often sort of speak to them around Christmas time and stuff like that. When the cold weather comes, we could publicise it. Hopefully, it's the same telephone number. I don't think it should be.
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
absolutely.
so, but it'd be good to sort of get that out to the
Yeah, that
the wider
information sheet.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
as well.
Yeah, we can do just a briefing maybe for members on Salvation Army and just over the winter.
Yeah, I think that would be really
Well,
useful.
that's-
If you get any queries, then, yeah, definitely.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
On to our next service plan review. It's environment and public protection. Thanks, David.
Thanks all.
And as Neil mentioned earlier, that head of service is not around today, so Matthew has kindly stepped in, and we have the cabinet member as well, Councillor Fordy. Welcome. Councillor Fordy, do you want to say anything to open, or do you want to hand straight over to the officers?
Well, I just highlight a couple of points and look forward to what the committee has got to say. Obviously, we've got quite a good news story really, and there's lots of things going on. One of the things I just like to highlight is the work going on now around 14 Rocks, which is really good to see. A big programme to refurbish a lot of our play areas, which is just beginning to come up, pick up speed, I think, and that's really pleasing to see. 3 weekly bin rollout, everybody's favourite, that's going well. And plans to tackle our carbon emissions has been really going well. The team have been doing some fantastic work there. They're progressing with the installation of solar panels, EV chargers around the city, LED lighting and air source heat pumps, all working to reduce our carbon footprint. So, yeah, those are typical.
Yeah, Chair, I'll just do a little bit of an introduction, and I'll hand to Matt to give some of the public protection specific aspects. But you know, looking at this area, it's mostly our bread and butter services. So you know, our waste collection, our parts, you know, lots of the day-to-day operational stuff. But there's a lot going on in terms of big projects, as the cabinet member addressed. See the big work on the SBF projects. The canal has been well noted, and that's some great to see that. But the play areas, so we were slightly slow getting this started, but now it's really got a lot of momentum behind it, and it's been really interesting to see the consultation responses. We've had really good engagement from the public, and it's constructive engagement. So I'm, as a council officer, I'm used to seeing public consultation where it's mainly just abuse, but on these we're seeing some really good ideas and things that what consultation for, because landscape architects and designers perhaps wouldn't think about these things for those communities. So some really good stuff to come out, and that's been able to be incorporated. So there's currently work on 7 arcs, 2 of them being completed, and you'll see the others going up now in months, and that program rolls on. So again, as a parent with 2 young kids, that's really good to see council investing in that area. Ash dieback remains a perennial problem for us. It hasn't gone away. Just in different communities, it's costing a lot of money, and the main overspend in the service area has been down to trees. So we're overspending about 300,000 in trees. It's been offset by vacancy provision elsewhere, but it remains close to budget, this service area. Just highlighting as a couple of 3 weekly, that's challenging for the service area to roll out, but it's progressing well. We've got some good initial results on that. But I wanted to highlight the impact of the climate change team. because although it's a small team within this service area, the changes that we've made over the last 4 to 5 years has actually resulted in a £2 million reduction in what our energy bills would have been this year as a council. So it's not, it's small scale things. You see a solar panel going up here or electric charge here, and the combined effect of all the investment we've had. We're now energy prices is a significant factor for the council. That's £2 million a year. So that's a huge one. Just put that in context, it's around about 3% on council tax, or 2 million that couldn't be spent on other services. So it's a positive for other services. But I think in summary, there's a lot of work going on in this service area and a lot of things to be pleased about. Matt, do you want to add to?
Okay, thank you. We've got a few things to say about the public protection side of the service. The first thing is the management changes that happened in April. There were 2 services, one for environmental health and community safety, and another for trading standards and licensing. In April, we changed that. The environmental health housing function moved to the new housing and community service area. So we had all the housing sort of solutions in one service area. Following that, all the remaining areas within environmental health and community safety came under one public protection service. So that's what I'm sort of referring to now. This involved a lot of new roles, some movement in the teams and job descriptions. That just takes a little bit of time. Probably by January, everything will be in place. We'll have a permanent solution. So that's been sort of a tricky task that we've been involved with. We're nearly at the end. Looking through the review document, we have a number of key actions I thought I would mention. Air quality, we have an action plan and a summary briefing. They're in draft format and will be sent out for consultation to the public in Q4. We have an annual report, obviously through every year, and it looks at all the different monitoring stations that we've got across Newport. And what that is showing is that the air quality is improving across the city. Probably in 2 years' time, maybe 3 years' time, we won't need any of our 11 AQMA areas, because the air quality will have improved to sustainable compliance sort of levels. In terms of antisocial behaviour interventions, the Market Arcade Public Spaces Protection Order has been renewed, and the Maze Glass PSPO has been reinstated. The ASB team, who were in the middle of all this work, they're instrumental in bringing partners together whenever there's an emerging problem. That work is ongoing, and the call on their services is more and more. They're doing very well. There's health enforcement and illicit goods interventions. This is a very successful area of work for the teams. There have been large seizures of products such as illegal tobacco, unsafe food, unsafe equipment, counterfeit goods, and unsafe vaping devices. Sort of just ongoing, week after week, the teams tell me more of these investigations, and then the result of those will be prosecution possibly, or sort of court appropriate enforcement action. And we also have a very successful inspection regime of food premises, and it was very similar to the comment that was made earlier about the HMO inspection regime. The food inspection regime was halted by COVID. Well, that now is back up and running. The Food Standards Agency provided us with a recovery plan, which we have met. A couple more issues. With safeguarding interventions, we're focused on financial safeguarding, and this is where the teams investigate rogue traders, provide advice, and deliver some key prevention work. Also within safeguarding, we've got a programme of training taxi drivers. The point of that is we make sure that the behaviour of taxi drivers is appropriate, as it should be, but we also give them really good advice on what to do if they identify inappropriate behaviour, what the referral pathways are. And that's mostly what we see from our taxi fleet. Licensing interventions, we have a significant partnership operating with Gwent Police and others, mostly to make the city centre safer at night. That's a lot of our work, and we've been, since COVID, when there was perhaps a 2-year gap between sort of businesses running good nightclubs, good pubs, that sort of thing. We've been on an improvement program. Mostly, the city centre is quite a safe place, and where we find problems, we will take businesses to licence review, which we've done successfully with the police over the last couple of months. Animal health, we operate the Newport City Dogs Home, essentially the dog kennels. It's incredibly busy. It's at capacity. We have a successful rehoming and volunteering programme. We're also doing a lot of work with illegal dog breeding. There's been a lot of that in the city centre. In the city, we've dealt with huge organised crime groups dealing with this, as well as sort of smaller enterprises. And then finally, our intervention, our serious organised crime work has seen us investigating quite a lot of consumer fraud. We've got cases with the value of the fraud being £2 million, and because we use the Proceeds of Crime Act quite a lot, we have £1 million of criminal assets frozen, awaiting court settlements. And we're also the host for Wales, for the regional investigations team, the intelligence function, and the All Wales illegal tobacco programme. So with Newport, we've got officers working for the Newport City Council that are operating in Anglesey, Pembrokeshire, Wrexham, and all over Wales. So that's my update. Thank you, Chair.
Floor's open. Councillor Thomas, anything please, first?
I think you know, should declare an interest here at this point as chair of licensing, but it was, yeah, the just taxi. I'd actually, this is actually, hadn't been on my mind to come and ask a question about. You just reminded me, so thank you. Taxis, the system to ensure that where escorts are used, particularly transporting children to the special schools, this sort of thing, where we have obviously high vulnerability in those children, it's been a considerable cause of concern. I should probably also declare I'm on the governing body of the special school, that there seems to be no manageable enforcement of safe, knowing whether the drivers who are driving the vehicle, are actually the people we've got done VABS for, and particularly for the escorts. How are we? Have we got a plan in progress for sorting that one out? Because that is, there are a huge number of these children who are transported around like that, and it does cause considerable concern to the staff.
So Matthew's team will license the taxis, but the school transport, the school one become the passenger transport. So that would be when Stephen.
Right, if so I'll take the phone to Steve. Remember that one in case I forget it. All right, right. Thank you very much. The ash dieback. Can I ask an ash dieback question? Well, this ash dieback, I don't really, I know that it's bad for trees, as was Dutch elm disease. And what do they do?
It's more than bad.
Do they mostly drop branches?
Well,
Spreads, don't they?
yeah.
Well, these things.
They can do. I've got pictures of various stages, and actually it can be quite bad if you leave it to the end.
What's the actual dangers to human life, though, if you don't cut these trees down?
The danger is actually the mechanism by which the tree does it sort of it's very stiff and it shatters. So
Right.
It's quite, I've seen some of the pictures and images, and it's quite bad. So there's the obvious danger of a tree falling down.
Yeah.
So damage to property and damage to council infrastructure, but also the way in which it does.
So, I mean, if we're as desperate as we are going to be for funds in the foreseeable future, what happens if you just took out the trees around the edge, let's say, of a 5-acre wood?
Well, we don't. Yeah, well, that's
something like
well, that's right. So the council's still liable for any. If the council doesn't maintain its trees in accordance with.
So we've got to cut them all down.
We have.
You can't get away with not.
When you're into a forest, it's actually a lot easier to deal with that work. The challenging and the costly ones are the ones along the highways,
Right.
because when you need to do road closures,
I remember
when you
the
move buses around,
the
you need
million
a particular machine to get on.
campaign.
So actually, the ones in the middle aren't that expensive.
Right.
Got down. It's the ones on the edge.
Right.
Unfortunately, we've got a lot of them on the edge. So
A lot of them,
yeah. So yeah, it's probably small councils. Newport was probably we had it first in Wales, or one of the first, and we have a lot of ash, but legally the council is responsible. So if a tree falls, trees can still fall on people and it's not be responsible. But if we haven't followed that correct maintenance regime, we are liable. And so insurance wise, it's not worth thinking about.
Right, what's good to
Yeah,
not that I want to see.
well, I
yet,
don't,
you know.
yeah, I suppose equally, honestly, the people with the tree team, they come there because they like trees and they want to be growing trees, and they're most of their time focus on making trees healthy.
Have we got to take out all of our ash trees?
We
We're
don't have
losing
to-
the entire population of ash trees.
We don't have to take out all of them, but we do have to take out most of them. So they'll identify the disease in its early stage, and that's what they'll take them out. Or if they're in a really awkward position or location, if you've got 3 in a difficult stage. So a few months ago, we had to close the next section of Malthus Road to hire a crane to lean over canal to get some trees. Now, I don't think all those trees were at the stage where they need to come out. However, there's quite a lot of work and disruption. And so they take a pragmatic approach of, well,
Sort
let's
them out
sort the ash trees whilst we're paying all this expense, because they need to do it in the lowest cost.
Right.
But
We were cutting them down last week, kept on.
Yeah.
No, no, okay. You did mention lights, didn't you? Road lights, safety. Well, this might go across 2 areas.
I don't remember mentioning those lights, but if you say I do,
Oh, no, you were actually talking about the money saved. Well, the 2 million.
Oh, we're talking about the
Solar
energy from solar panels.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I remember this a few years ago. Obviously, this was a big thing. Since I was elected 12 years ago, we've had this come up a few times because, first of all, we didn't have more economical lighting and they switched on every other light standoff. There was lots of complaints about us at the time. And we went to LED lighting, which we were told saved us about some money. Now, I heard a complaint this morning from the Dufferin area, saying that they had the streets there, but the street lighting has now been switched off.
So last year,
It's on all these days.
so street lighting goes off at midnight now
Right,
across the city.
6 o'clock.
Well, apart
Right.
from certain interviews,
Right.
and then comes back on at 6.
right, okay.
These questions for Steve.
But yeah, they are.
Okay, just
it's part of Stephen's.
All right. Well, remember that
The
one.
climate change element is
Is that-
a big part of the actual day-to-day operational.
Yeah,
stuff, like
It was
There's
actually.
a lot you have to remember
It
for
was-
Stephen at this rate. So.
it's a safety aspect, because the person who reported this to me as part of the 50+ forum deliberations were actually felt unsafe and thought people were using that darkness to case the groups. Yeah, so I mean, you know. Is which of you is that? Is that Steve?
So that'll be, yeah, so highways is in the Stephen. So
Right, and safety for all residents' perception of, feeling safe and secure.
I suppose that's in all departments, but the actual the saving proposal and the that is in the Stephen. So we pick it up there.
I guess the question for Matthew is, have you seen an impact from the increase in antisocial behaviour as a result of street lighting?
No, we haven't, but we would deal with slightly different side of the antisocial behaviour sort of work. That would be a question for colleagues in the police. We've got access to that data, so that's definitely something that we can find out. If I had the dates when the change was, then we can look at certain
I'll
crime
try and
types.
nail it down from my from the woman who reported it.
I can take that action.
Yeah, Neil maybe.
Can I contact the tree team?
What particular issues?
Well, groups of trees.
Your best route is to send it to members at City Services. Someone will pick it up there, they'll allocate it to the tree team, and a specific issue is probably.
General issue straight to members, or if he's struggling, the guys at Democratic Services point you in the right direction. Any other questions, Councillor Horton?
On page 47, page 10, and you can use it. Development of the sports and recreational strategy. How are we going to do that with the disarray, I guess, that we're still in with the leisure centre? Just talking to board members of Newport now. Newport Live on the board. We're still some way behind where I think we think we are. But the reality, well, my understanding of the situation is there's no contractors in place. There's you may have think that some of the activity required to actually get on with the bills, but we're a long way back from where we should and could be. Would you agree with that? And then how do we, you know, with that in mind, how do we then build a strategy around where we're going to be with recreational sports without we'll call it one of our flagship locations for the city?
So on the leisure project, again, that's so Newport Live doesn't come under this. The sports strategy is the wider sports strategy.
Yes, but that's a massive piece of it, isn't it?
Yeah, so sorry, it will be a component of it, but it's largely focused on our parks and on our recreational facilities. There will be a touch to some of the Newport Live assets. This is the council-wide strategy that we picked up there. In terms of the leisure project itself, I think Tracy has scrutiny.
Next week.
So report went to cabinet. Or was it the last cabinet? I can't remember. I think it was the last cabinet day. So I can't totally remember off the top of my head, but I think enabling works starting the new year for the new site.
Yeah. So I guess just on that point, if I can, we're 10% of progress on the RAG assessment on that, and expected to complete in 3 months. So should that be a reg?
I think I was just going to say that's one of the ones I looked at earlier, and I think it's borderline for that. It is a little bit behind. I would say just, all I'd say the reason for that is that this whole team is busy with a lot of projects at the moment, and I think it's more to do with that per se rather than a specific hold upon the leisure that will form part of it and what that means. But I think it's literally just down to the team's capacity at the moment. That may well drop into a red for the next update. But yeah, I agree. I think it's a little bit optimistic.
Anybody else?
Can I go back to the free weekly bins? Have fly tipping increased since free weekly bins?
So we're collecting data at the moment on free weekly. There doesn't seem to be any significant increase in fly tipping. In terms of enforcement, actually enforcement action has been a lot less than we originally planned, which is encouraging. Taking a soft approach to start off with and be phased in. I think that's one thing we say on fly tipping is the majority of the fly tipping that we deal with is the sort of it is commercial stroke and the ban type stuff. It tends to be the sort of things that you drop off at civic amenity site rather than domestic properties. What we say is that from the work that we've done, it's easier just to separate out your recycling than it is to legally dispose of your waste. We've got some figures from the first phase. There wasn't any increase then. We know how we did in that. Actually, we're just in the middle now of the rollout for the rest of Newport, so it'll take a couple of months for us to settle down and have accurate data because things wobble around each month. A little bit of feedback.
You say there is an increase on like white van guys. Do they need a license to?
Yeah. So anyone collecting waste from
it's an advertiser with £10 to empty their bin.
So
it's pretty cheap.
If someone's advertising for £10 then it is the onus on the property owner, just duty of care to check whether waste is being dealt with. And so I think the team is doing more focus around that. Yes, there's legitimate people who collect waste. That's fine. That's absolutely allowed, and people take it to our facility or for other facilities. And obviously there's a cost for disposal of waste, and there's legitimate recyclers. But yeah, if you're handing material to people for very low cost, then perhaps I'm pretty surprised what's happening to it.
It's one of the things we think fly tipping would be to understand the data as to whether there has been an increase in fly tipping. It's also useful to understand whether there's an increase in the number of private waste carriers using our facility. So are people just paying elsewhere?
Yeah.
Some good data.
Yeah, we could get that. Of course, they don't need to use our facility. We are one. Yeah, probably the most convenient if you're in Newport.
Yeah.
But and we can get that information. That probably wouldn't give you a clear picture of everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can.
Councillor Harris.
Yeah. Now that recycling is coming into the commercial field, is there any advice for commercial properties and things which recycling?
So business is always, not always, but certainly the last 7 or 8 years had a requirement to recycle. The changes that happen in April next year is a statutory requirement to recycle certain things and recycle them in a way that maintains their value. So food, paper, card, plastic, and textiles if you have over a certain amount.
I'm thinking of community halls and things.
Yeah. So so obviously council provides a commercial waste service, but it's a sort of charge, and we're one of many that provide that. Same as most councils. You can pay different to collect your waste, you pay up, but so we'll be amending our service to make sure it's compliant, and there'll be information provided to businesses. Welsh Government is leading on the communications of that and start the communications campaign, but we'll also be doing that as our role as a local authority.
I think for community halls, they're used by a lot of different groups, and just have to make sure that those groups are aware that whatever they produce is recycled.
Yeah,
sort of thing. Especially the food waste side of it, I think.
Yeah, and food waste is challenging. But yeah, probably some of those. You have to have a certain amount of food waste before you become liable for the new regulations. But yeah, they need to go with those categories. But I think that's the team who pick that up.
But I'm thinking, the commercial, the food caddies, I don't think will be large enough for a community hall.
No, so at the moment we're waste savers provide food waste to businesses, but there has food waste. One of the reasons it's becoming statutory is to encourage that take up. Reason being is food waste quite dense, so but you pay by volume, so you pay by how many litres you pick up. So it skews against food waste to some regard, but commercial premises will have specific bins, larger bins than the caddies. So there's a number of them offered. I think there are, I think from memory, they're 180 litres, but I'm sure. And those are provided to commercial bins. But again, there are other commercial suppliers who do this as well.
Yeah, the bags that go with them as well.
Yeah. But what you tend to do is you tend to have smaller bag candy or things within the premises, and you'll put them into a big bag because a full wheelie bin of food waste is quite heavy.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, just clear interest in this in the city, just to help with that question. There's a lot of information being sent out already, so I've had at least 3 letters about it. It's 5 kilos of waste before you've got to start to separate that out.
Yeah.
In what period of time is that?
No, it's only
collections.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't actually stipulate the period of time.
Okay. So it could be 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
It was meant to be a week, but it's something that's not very clear on the.
Yeah,
Right, okay.
It doesn't actually stipulate what it is.
You could think about that.
There's a lot there to be fair to the Newport Council and Trade Waste and Waste Savers as well. They are really good at what they do with regards to that, and they are really effective as well. They do. I take that off to them on this one. They are really good at it, and the enforcement team as well. Whenever I've gone to them with issues, it's always been really helpful as well.
Councillor Ben?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was just around fly tipping enforcement. I understand our focus is mainly on recycling, which is good. Obviously, we have to hit targets set by Welsh Government. I mean, what sort of measures do we have in place or strategies just generally to tackle fly tipping? Really, I know it's a generic question, but I think it's quite an important one, when it comes to enforcing, against prolific fly tippers that are out there at the cost of, the taxpayer's pocket.
So the reason you'd outline the full range of what we do, but we do have our enforcement education team, which do take the work on board. We do a lot of work on enforcement. Relevant to Welsh councils, we set the most enforcement emphasis. The one thing we do have, which is a huge challenge, and I think the service has raised this in the past, is actually the enforcement regime and how it sits. So we can spend a lot of work. We'll have video evidence of people. We'll have statements. We'll carry out interviews, and we can issue a fixed penalty notice of up to I think £400. But if we think it's a more serious offence and take it to court, then we're at the hands of magistrates. And historically, magistrates have been extremely lenient on this. This is something that actually people's AMs have raised in the Senate, so we've campaigned against along with other councils. So the team is often frustrated by the fact that very good evidence takes a lot of work to follow up. It's not an easy job. I think, we get a lot of complaints from residents saying, oh, there's a picture, I know it's red or whatever. That isn't enough. You have to comply with the law. But even when we do all that work, then making sure that the penalties fit the crime has been challenging for us.
Yes, I think I add on to that point. The team leader for the waste enforcement team sits in another area of EPP to mine, but because we're trying to embed real strong partnership links across all the teams within the service area and beyond, where that person now has got that team leader has got an invite to the tasking meeting that we have in public protection. And then the idea then is that there will be, with the commercial fly tippers, we will be investigating them because they are rogue traders, and that at the end of the day they're tipping the waste from their rogue trader job. We've also got so we've got common targets, and also we have Proceeds of Crime Act investigators, financial investigators within trading standards, that the waste team, for the higher level stuff they do, if they would engage with us, then we could provide them with more enhanced enforcement tools as well. So we're working together in partnership across the teams.
I think that's one of the reasons that these services being merged in the new structure is to bring that enforcement angle and as professionals the Matthew's team's got into the team. And Matthew's exactly right. It's no coincidence that the same person we wanted for fly tip, we wanted for something else, and we've seen them across different areas of the council. But it does take a lot of resource. It isn't easy, and often the team can be left demoralised because it gets kicked back. So but there's a lot of work going on, and it's really good when we get some successes.
Yeah, just a question before about waste savers. Will waste savers be the main go-to for businesses with this new workplace regulation?
So what the team is working on at the moment, exactly how to structure that, and what we want to do is have a one-stop shop, because we recognise businesses, currently those who are doing their recycling, they go in different places, but we're working together with waste savers so that we'll have one front of door, so a business then can come to us and say, I now comply with anything to do with this, and we'll sort that out. Working with waste savers, they still have the service, then they've got the capacity, the depot, but we're trying to generate one front door to try and simplify it for businesses, because this is going to be a bit of a challenge.
Will waste savers have the capacity and needs?
Yeah, and that's hopefully it's a bit of an unknown, because we know how much waste is in all the bins, and because Wales is first in taking this legislation, we don't know how quick the change is going to be. Also, we don't know what commercial providers will go out in the market. So, there are commercial operators operating trade waste or mixed recycle services in Newport, in the West Country. They say, well, actually, we can't provide it, and then suddenly pull out. So the council and the legislation is the provider of last resort as well. So it is going to be a bit of a challenge for us, but we are trying to make sure we've got some extra spare capacity in vehicles. And also we're working with NRW, will be the enforcement agent for most of it. Matt's team will be the enforcement agent for a niche part of it, which is around food grade macerators, isn't it? But most of the enforcement will be done by NRW, so we're working with them to how we can land and get our way through this to try and make it as easy as possible for the businesses, but also just to increase that recycling.
Yeah.
Yes, are you able to use closed circuit television or covert surveillance? What are we looking at in cameras? Can you use temporary cameras?
We are, in terms of fly tip and also in terms of other aspects too. Okay. However, it's a heavily regulated area.
Because I have had a persistent problem, a couple of persistent. One of them I'm quite sure is a landlord who is not advising his tenants appropriately. The problem is with the tenants, but we know from previous investigations the landlord needs to get a grip of it. And the other one is just been complicated, but it could have been sorted out a lot quicker if we could have had a camera on that.
So there's a barrier, and there's there are requirements that you need to meet before you can go to covert surveillance in particular, which the RIPA legislation, and that wants to expand on the challenges that face. It's not just as easy as setting up a camera, but although we do a lot of covert surveillance.
Well, we have had a camera. We've had a camera down on an area where we feel people are consistently speeding down on one bank. And they did put a camera up there, and actually I didn't know anything about it, and they just did it. It was
How many tickets?
and that was really quite quick. No, they can't, because it's because they don't have they haven't got the right legislative power to enforce. But the point was getting the evidence. I'm sure Stephen's aware of this one. The point is to get the evidence so that it can be enforced if necessary.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
One of the roles I've got is the authorised office of the council for RIPA regulation and investigative powers act. So that's all about covert sort of surveillance for the purposes of the court. Because with the council, we've got quite a lot of rules that we have to obey. So the police can do quite a lot of extra.
What they can do.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
we're only allowed to use reverse CCTV surveillance, that sort of thing, if it passes a seriousness threshold, and that will be whether, and that all tracks back to if that person went to court, what is the maximum sentence that they could have. So if it's above 2 years, then we can we can put covert surveillance in.
Right.
But if it's below 2 years,
Right.
then we can't. But that doesn't mean to say that we haven't got any options, because the other option is that we put overt surveillance in.
Right, okay.
And what that would be is that you could just tell everybody and put posts up and everything to say CCTV is watching you,
Right.
and then that means you're outside of the scope of RIPA.
Right.
Go put cameras up, and if you catch anything,
Okay.
you
Well, that's
can
very
use
useful
it.
to know. Thank you. I didn't realise the difference. So, okay, no, that is useful to know. Thank you. It doesn't explain how I got the camera down Thomas Castle Drive. doesn't it?
Well, on one bank, it's not adopted, is it? So I'm assuming that's private.
No, that's another question. That is, isn't it?
One for Steve. Steve's got this.
You're writing all this down. Right.
Any other questions? Any recommend? I've got a couple if I can. The budget question and the sort of finance forecasts. Revenue spend, you said, is up about 300,000, which is somewhat to the sample. The capital forecast is a bit confusing because there's no budget line there. And it looks like we're about 4 million quid on the spent.
Yeah, it's not. That's just the way the graphs are drawn. I picked this up as well. So I think what drives this is that all the money in the service area of capital is actually grants, and therefore there's expected no base budget in the year. They're successful in attracting money, and that gets spent. But I do need to check that. It is largely grant. So if you notice on some other areas, their capital budget will start with that. Their budget will also rise for the year when the grants get added.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's happening. It's not overspending; it's spending in line. But yeah, that graph is almost useless to tell us that, isn't it? Yeah. So it will be. We'll get Cindy to add a clarification on exactly the position there. The reason it's gone up though is that she's acquired more grants throughout the year. So I know what some of those grants are. So I recognize them.
Okay. Picked up on the one policy which was sort of 10% in orange. There's one a bit further down, which is 20% in green. And to take community asset transfers to sport pitches. There's a policy being developed to provide a future favourite for requests, but that again is a completion by March 24. We're only at 20%, so I wonder whether it should be green or at least amber or possibly red.
My understanding with that one is on track for it was starting. There was a lot of low level work at the start, and now it's picked up pace, and it is likely to be on track. But we can. I'd have to get some clarification from Sylvia on exactly where that is. So my understanding at the moment is it is on track for end of March.
The one on the same lines then, page 59, restart for payment advice services after COVID-19 recovery. That's at 0%. And again, due to complete on 30th of March. That's page 59 on the left-hand side, page numbers.
On the right hand side.
22, but there's like a couple of 22s.
So error in the formatting.
Yeah.
I can come back on that. That the idea with that is that there's a budget line within the environmental health and safety budget with a particular sort of income target for advice and training and that sort of thing. And it's not a huge amount, it's like 20-something thousand pounds. But because we came into COVID and there was a feeling that, you know, because that's a pre-COVID, it's been on the budget for quite a while. We came into COVID, lots of new food businesses had started, newer food businesses who perhaps didn't have that regular, you know, sort of input from us as we were doing our inspections. This is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do. There was like a big batch of newer businesses, and it's also what people did during COVID is they started a food business. We then put in a bid to the Shared Prosperity Fund saying, could we have funding to fund an officer to fund training for newer businesses free. So what that did, that was brilliant for the newer businesses. It was not good for our income target. So it's green in the sense, I would say it should have no colour, right? It's green in the sense that that we're not going to do anything because we're focused on providing free advice, but it's possibly, you know, red in the sense that we're not going to bring in any you know, any income on that particular area. It's like a planned retreat for 2 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. It can't go for stripey, so I'd suggest it possibly it's red with justification.
Yeah,
but
yeah. So yeah, it probably is red, but actually because we probably have generated the additional money because we brought it in from external sources as opposed to the business. Right? So yeah, get that. No, that's a useful explanation.
It was covered by a grant though.
Yes.
Yes. Well, so it's cost neutral effectively, isn't it?
That
It's had a result, but it's been cost neutral to the council.
that it is, but I suppose if it isn't achieved because it can't be achieved, but it's fine. It's just yeah, it's misleading. That was written there, so
Okay.
I don't know, we'll just delete that action. I see that confusion.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make a comment if I can. I mean, it was useful to have Matthew here today because when the head of service comes, they sell all the different aspects of the service. Matthew was heavily focused on some of the great work that you're doing in public protection. And some of the statistics and figures that you gave about some of the actions the team have done around the sort of vaping and high level numbers for organised crime and all that stuff would be really good to kind of publicise in terms of the work that the council is doing. Because no disrespect Sylvia whatsoever, but had you not come to it, probably wouldn't have seen some of that work. And it's really great to get that
I
across.
think it's fair. A lot of the stuff that Matt's team does goes under the radar. It's one of those council services that people don't really know, but it is having a big impact.
Yeah.
And you know, we see that as a small budget line in council, small department, but the impact that has on everyone across the board is huge.
And you know, important things for the members of the public that people want to see us acting on and taking action on. So it's really good to see that. Like, you know, love to see something, you know, published like that. People can see what we do. Thank you. Anything else from me? Sorry, did you want to come in?
I just wanted to make another comment on the play paths, really, because that's something you know, particularly pleased to see this programme going on and much needed. But one of the things I've been taking a particular interest in is the accessible play equipment. So you know, I've got a list of all the plans and all of the accessible play which is going into it, and of course we opened the Repair Street play a little while ago, and there's some accessible play there, but it's very subtly delivered as well, so it kind of like looks really nice. It's not like here's an obvious place for a wheelchair, but there's a space on the roundabout merry-go-round for it.
Yeah.
You know, there's provision in the swing area. There's also some kind of like sign Macaton the signage there. So it is something I've been taking a particular interest in, and I think it's going to be in all and in all of the parks that we're going to be developing soon. So, and somebody did write to me about it and say, you know, what to be doing about it. And I thought, okay, I'll just take a particular interest in to make sure that we are. And I think there's a good element in all of them parks coming up. So I just wanted to
Yeah, no, I'm grateful for that. Because of those, yeah, of course,
Yeah, I was a bit disappointed in the consultation. How many members of the public attended the consultation? Because I know I attended on the afternoon they were in Bettis in the hub. And I was chatting to the fella there. Do you know how many people attended in Bettis?
Well,
7.
if it's anything like the
I know, I've got people commenting to me about what's happening to the park.
One of the things I would say is actually numbers across the board, not necessarily at drop-in events, has been good. And one of the things that through the park and that across the board is the QR codes in the park now. So if you're going to park that's going to be renovated, and I know this because your kids are off running around, you're sat on to the side with things to do, mess around with your phone. Oh, you can scan that in and do and we're getting a lot of them from that. So parents who are actually in the park experiencing it. And it's interesting, and that's given some, rather than just perception, but obviously more done or some vague stuff, that's given some really nitty-gritty stuff, and that's worked well.
Yeah, I was going to make the opposite point when it comes to Clare. I'm really pleased with the consultation as well. And Councillor Ford, you'll know that I've been sort of championing the sort of improvement in the parks, and we ran an event at Elmwood Surgeries, and officers came along to that. I thought they were excellently run, and we had a really good turnout. And really good, also digital feedback that accompanied that as well. And the officers were great in terms of sharing the feedback that they had, which was great, with us, and then sort of giving the ward councillors a couple of options to go back and talk to the community about. So it felt like a worked with process rather than a done to process, which I think is sort of massive in terms of safety.
I would say my experience of seeing the results of those conversations is, this is definitely one of the better ones. It will never be perfect, and you can't force everyone to engage in. And people use different means now, so then it does. In-person drop-in varies dramatically across the city, but we've got these other means, and so we've got across the board we've generally got a good number of responses. I mean, I'm coming one way, but yeah, I think this is for this budget consultations in a few months' time, and they're never perfect. But this. Just looking back, I've been quite impressed with it.
Yeah, clearly means something to people because people respond. If it's the LDP consultation, you just get those people that are interested in it. But with this, it's gone much wider.
It does, and there are a certain age, it's a small amount of money relative to how much money the council spends, but it's a big impact. Absolutely.
Yes, I don't know if you know, but at conference, not one just gone to the conference before, Ruth was chairing a session about accessibility for parks. So I don't know whether she's still involved with it, but 12 months ago she very much was. With central government, so the well-being conversation we could have with Ruth, and she may want no access to some additional funding. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm expecting to meet with Ruth next week, but it's something that I've taken a particular interest in. I like the way the team have put it into operation as well, because it's there, but it's not in your face. It's really a facility, but it's not a separate facility. It's all integrated. Yeah, which so I think it's. But yeah, I will chat with her. Yeah,
12 months ago she was chairing a session on it. So.
Yeah, well, I can't remember the name of the resident. Obviously, I can disclose it anyway. But I'm, grateful for the resident that wrote to me about 18 months ago, a year ago, and all right, that was a useful nudge to me to to keep an eye on it, which I have. Yeah, inclusive. It's important that we're inclusive. Yeah,
absolutely. Any other questions on the environment and public protection? Okay. Does anybody need to have a quick comfort break, or are we all okay? John, you look like you were going to jump up again. Stephen, sorry, you just have 2 minutes quick comfort break and then.
Yeah.
Some pause, or yeah, they'll put it on pause now.